"You don't look like someone with this kind of money." Those words hit James like a punch, standing at a San Francisco bank counter clutching an envelope of savings for his wife Sarah's life-saving heart surgery. A hard-working immigrant and Keanu Reeves' trusted driver for 8 years, James faces humiliating prejudice from a teller who judges his worn clothes and accent. Shattered but resilient, he shares his pain with Keanu, the Hollywood star known for his quiet kindness. What follows is a journey of justice, redemption, and unexpected bonds that shakes a community awake. From a viral confrontation to a transformed heart, this story unveils the power of dignity in the face of injustice. How far will one man's compassion go to right a wrong? Stick around to find out, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? We read every one. "You don't look like someone with this kind of money." The sting of those words still echoed in James' mind as he prepared to face the bank, but that moment was yet to come. For now, he was just a man with a purpose, driven by love and quiet resolve. James, a 47-year-old Mexican immigrant, had been Keanu Reeves' driver for 8 years, navigating the streets of San Francisco with a steady hand and a heart full of sacrifice. His life revolved around his family, his wife Sarah battling a chronic heart condition, and his daughter Emily chasing her dream of becoming a nurse. Every dollar James earned, every overtime shift he took, went toward paying Sarah's medical bills and keeping Emily in college. He was the kind of man who skipped meals to save a few bucks, who ironed his simple white shirt with care, knowing it was all he had to present himself to a world quick to judge. Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood icon behind films like The Matrix and John Wick, was more than James's employer. Known worldwide for his humility and generosity, Keanu treated James with a respect that went beyond words. Their rides together were often quiet, but the silence was warm, built on mutual understanding. Keanu, who had faced his own share of loss and struggle, saw James not as a driver, but as a man with a story, a life, a purpose. He tipped James generously, slip him extra cash for Emily's textbooks, or ask about Sarah's health with genuine care. To Keanu, fame was secondary. People were what mattered. That's why, when James faced an injustice that threatened to break him, Keanu would step in, not as a celebrity, but as a friend who couldn't stand by while wrong was done. James lived in San Francisco's Mission District, a vibrant neighborhood where murals brightened the walls and the air carried the scent of taquerias. But beneath the color, the city was a place of stark divides. Wealth glittered in skyscrapers downtown, while communities like James's faced rising rents and subtle prejudices. As an immigrant with a slight accent and a wardrobe of modest clothes, James knew how it felt to be overlooked, to have his worth questioned because of his skin or his job. Yet he carried on, driven by a promise to Sarah made years ago when they crossed the border together that they'd build a better life. Now, with Sarah's surgery looming, James was ready to cash out his savings at the Wells Fargo on Market Street. The envelope in his pocket held every penny he'd scraped together, years of sweat, skipped vacations, and quiet dreams. But doubt gnawed at him. Would the bank see him for who he was? A devoted husband, a father, a man who'd earned every cent? Or would they see only his worn shoes, his brown skin, his hesitant English? James had heard stories of others like him, turned away or scrutinized for no reason other than how they looked. The thought made his stomach twist as he prepared for the visit. This wasn't just about money. It was about Sarah's life, Emily's future, and his own dignity. He couldn't afford to fail, but he also couldn't shake the fear that the world might not give him a fair shot. Keanu, unaware of the storm brewing, relied on James' steady presence. Their bond, forged in countless drives through the city, was a quiet anchor in Keanu's chaotic world. He'd often share small stories with James about his mother's struggles, his sister's passing, or the weight of fame, and James would listen, offering a nod or a thoughtful word. It was this connection that would soon draw Keanu into James' fight, not for glory, but because he believed no one should be diminished for who they are. As James stepped toward the bank, the stage was set for a clash that would expose the city's hidden divides and reveal the power of one man's compassion to change everything. What would happen when Keanu learned the truth? The answer would ripple far beyond that single day. James clutched the worn envelope in his calloused hands, its edges soft from years of careful handling. Inside was every dollar he'd saved for Sarah's heart surgery, money earned through long nights driving, missed family dinners, and dreams deferred. As he stepped into the Wells Fargo on Market Street, his heart pounded with a mix of hope and dread. He'd rehearsed this moment, picturing a smooth transaction, a step closer to saving his wife. But deep down, he braced for the judgment he'd faced too many times before. Standing in line, James straightened his faded jacket, smoothed his hair, and whispered a quiet prayer. This had to work, for Sarah, for Emily, for the life he'd promised them. The bank buzzed with the hum of routine, tellers tapping keyboards, customers shuffling papers. James took a deep breath and approached the counter when his number was called. Behind the glass sat Michael, a 35-year-old teller with a crisp tie and a face that seemed permanently unimpressed. James offered a polite smile, sliding the envelope forward. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "I need to withdraw this for my wife's surgery." Michael's eyes flicked from the envelope to James, lingering on his weathered hands, his simple clothes, the faint accent in his words. Without a word, he opened the envelope, counted the cash, and frowned. "This is a large amount," he said, his tone sharp, clinical. "Can you prove where it came from?" James blinked, caught off guard. "It's my savings," he explained. "I've been putting it aside for years. I drive for Keanu Reeves, the actor. It's all legitimate." Michael's lips curled into a skeptical smirk, barely hidden. "You drive for Keanu Reeves?" he repeated, his voice dripping with doubt. "And you saved this much?" He typed slowly, glancing at his screen as if expecting a red flag to confirm his suspicions. James felt his face heat up, the weight of every eye in the bank suddenly on him. "It's for my wife," he said, softer now, almost pleading. "She needs heart surgery. I've worked hard for this." Michael leaned back, crossing his arms. "I'm sorry, but we need documentation. Bank policy. You don't exactly look like someone with this kind of money." The words landed like a slap, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. James froze, his throat tightening. He wanted to argue, to shout that he'd earned every cent, that his love for Sarah was worth more than any bank's approval. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he felt small, invisible, reduced to the stereotypes he'd fought his whole life. Just then, a man in a tailored suit approached the next counter. He was white, middle-aged, exuding confidence. His withdrawal, larger than James, was processed in minutes, no questions asked, no proof demanded. The teller smiled, wished him a good day. James watched, a bitter ache rising in his chest. The contrast was unmistakable, a silent confirmation of the world's uneven rules. He turned back to Michael, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, I've driven for 8 years. I've never missed a bill. This is for my wife's life." Michael shrugged, unmoved. "Without verification, I can't help you. Next in line." The dismissal was final, cold. James stood there, hands trembling, as the line behind him shifted impatiently. A woman muttered something about wasting time. Another customer avoided his gaze. Humiliation washed over him, hot and suffocating. He gathered the envelope, his dignity in tatters, and walked out, each step heavier than the last. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent. James leaned against the car he drove for Keanu, the familiar black sedan that had carried them through countless quiet moments. He closed his eyes, memories flooding back. Times he'd been turned away from jobs, stared at in stores, or asked to prove his place in a country he'd called home for decades. As an immigrant, he'd learned to swallow these moments, to keep moving for his family, but this was different. This wasn't just about him. It was about Sarah, lying in a hospital bed, counting on him. It was about Emily, who believed her father could do anything. The weight of their trust pressed against his chest, and for the first time in years, James felt tears prick his eyes. He wiped them away, straightened up, and slid into the driver's seat. Keanu was waiting, and James had never let him down. But as he gripped the steering wheel, a quiet resolve stirred beneath his pain. This wasn't over. He didn't know how, but he'd find a way. What he couldn't know was that Keanu, the man who saw the world through a lens of compassion, was about to turn this moment of injustice into something no one could ignore. James guided the black sedan through San Francisco's bustling streets, his hands steady on the wheel despite the storm inside him. The humiliation at the bank still burned, each word from Michael replaying like a wound that wouldn't close. He was headed to a film set to pick up Keanu Reeves, the man he'd driven for 8 years, whose quiet kindness had become a constant in his life. But today, keeping up his usual professionalism felt like lifting a mountain. James adjusted his rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of his own red-rimmed eyes. He forced a deep breath, willing himself to focus. Sarah needed him, Emily needed him, and Keanu deserved the reliable driver he'd always been. Keanu emerged from the set, his familiar black jeans and worn jacket a stark contrast to the Hollywood glow around him. He slid into the back seat with a warm "Hey James," his voice as steady as ever. But as the car pulled away, Keanu's gaze lingered on the rearview mirror. James's silence was different today. Not the comfortable quiet they often shared, but something heavy, wounded. His hands gripped the wheel too tightly, his jaw set in a way that spoke of pain held back. Keanu, who'd always been attuned to the unspoken, felt the shift like a change in the air. "You okay, James?" Keanu asked, his tone gentle but direct. James forced a nod, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just a tough day, sir. Nothing big." The words were a shield, but they crumbled under Keanu's steady gaze. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. 8 years, James. You've never once brushed me off." "Don't start now." His voice wasn't commanding, but it carried a sincerity that disarmed James's defenses. James swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the road. The weight of the morning pressed against him, and Keanu's kindness cracked something open. "I went to the bank today," he began, his voice trembling. "For Sarah's surgery. I had the money, every cent I've saved. But the teller, he wouldn't let me have it. Said I didn't look like someone with that kind of money. Asked for proof, like I was a thief." He paused, the memory of Michael's smirk cutting fresh. "I told him it was for my wife, that I drive for you. He didn't care, just sent me away." Keanu's face remained still, but his eyes darkened with a quiet fury. He knew this kind of pain, not just from James, but from his own past. He remembered his mother, working 3 jobs, enduring sneers from those who saw her as less because of her clothes or her accent. He remembered the sting of being judged, of being made to feel small. "He said that to you?" Keanu asked, his voice low, measured. James nodded, his hands tightening on the wheel. "It wasn't just the words. It was how he looked at me. Like I didn't belong there. Like I was nothing." The car fell silent, the hum of the engine the only sound. Keanu leaned back, his fingers tapping lightly on his knee, a sign his mind was racing. He didn't speak, but his resolve was forming, solid as stone. James wasn't just his driver, he was a man who'd shown up day after day, through Keanu's own darkest moments, after loss, through exhaustion, always with quiet strength. Now, James needed someone to show up for him. Keanu's jaw tightened, his decision made. This wasn't just about a bank transaction. It was about dignity, about righting a wrong that cut deeper than words could express. Whatever came next, Keanu wouldn't let this stand. The morning sun cast long shadows as James pulled the sedan up to the Wells Fargo on Market Street, his hands still tight on the wheel from yesterday's wound. Keanu Reeves sat in the back seat, his usual calm demeanor now laced with a quiet intensity. "We're stopping here first," Keanu said, his voice steady but resolute. James glanced back, confusion flickering in his eyes, but he nodded, trusting the man he'd driven for 8 years. As Keanu stepped out, the envelope of James' savings tucked inside his jacket, he carried a purpose that felt larger than the moment. This wasn't just about money. It was about restoring what had been unjustly taken from a man he respected. Inside, the bank hummed with its usual rhythm, tellers processing transactions, customers waiting in line. But the air shifted the moment Keanu walked through the glass doors. Heads turned, whispers rippled, and a security guard did a double take. Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood star whose kindness was as legendary as his films, was here, in their ordinary branch. Phones slipped out of pockets, red recording lights blinking as customers and staff sensed something extraordinary on. Keanu approached the counter, his expression calm but unyielding, and asked for Michael by name. Michael, oblivious to the storm approaching, stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Monsieur Reeves, what an honor," he stammered, his clipboard clutched like a shield, but his confidence faltered as Keanu placed James' envelope on the counter, the same one Michael had dismissed the day before. "I'm here to make a deposit," Keanu said, his voice low, deliberate. But first I have a question. Do you treat every customer the way you treated the man who brought this envelope yesterday? The question hung in the air, sharp and inescapable. Michael's smile vanished, his face paling as the weight of Keanu's words sank in. The lobby grew quieter, every ear straining to hear. I followed bank policy, Michael stuttered, his voice thin. We require verification for large sums. It's standard procedure. Keanu's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with a clarity that cut through excuses. This isn't about policy, he said. It's about dignity. You looked at a man who's worked harder than most and decided he didn't belong here. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it, his knuckles white around the clipboard. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his presence commanding without raising his voice. Let me tell you about the man you turned away. His name is James. He's driven me for 8 years. Early mornings, late nights, never a complaint. He's saved every dollar in this envelope for his wife's heart surgery. Years of sacrifice, of putting his family first. Do you have any idea what that means? The words were steady, but they carried a raw edge, a glimpse of Keanu's own pain from a life marked by loss and struggle. The crowd was silent now, some nodding, others looking down, struck by the truth in Keanu's voice. A woman in line wiped her eyes. A young teller froze mid-transaction. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his excuses crumbling. I didn't know, he mumbled, but the words sounded hollow. Keanu didn't flinch. You didn't ask, he said. You saw his clothes, his skin, his accent, and you judged. That's not procedure, that's prejudice. David, the bank manager, hurried over, his tie slightly askew, sensing the growing tension. Mr. Reeves, perhaps we can discuss this in my office, he offered, his smile strained. Keanu held up a hand, polite but firm. No, I asked for Michael, and I'll finish this here. James deserves that. The refusal sent a ripple through the room, amplifying the moment. Phones kept recording, capturing every word, every glance. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a reckoning. Keanu placed his hand on the envelope, his voice softening but no less powerful. This money represents a man's love for his wife, his hope for his daughter. You took more than a transaction from him yesterday. You took his pride. He paused, letting the words settle. I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen again. Michael's shoulders slumped, his face a mix of shame and defensiveness. The videos being recorded were already spreading, snippets hitting social media, sparking outrage and admiration across the city. Keanu stepped back, his point made, but his eyes lingered on Michael, a silent challenge to do better. He turned toward the door where James stood, watching through the glass, his expression unreadable. This moment, born of quiet compassion, was about to change everything. Not just for James, but for a community waking up to the cost of judgment. What would come next was anyone's guess, but Keanu had set something in motion that no one could ignore. The video of Keanu Reeves' confrontation at the Wells Fargo spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views overnight. Comments poured in, some praising Keanu's quiet strength, others condemning the bank's bias. For Michael, the teller at the center of the storm, each notification felt like a fresh wound. He sat alone in his apartment, scrolling through the vitriol, the words prejudice and shame searing into him. But it wasn't the public's anger that broke him. It was a memory, long buried, of his mother, a Filipino immigrant who'd worked as a cleaner, enduring sneers and slights to give him a better life. Michael had vowed never to be like those who hurt her, yet here he was, the man who'd humiliated James, a mirror of the cruelty his mother had faced. The realization hit like a tidal wave. He'd become the kind of person she'd wept over. Michael's hands shook as he wrote a letter, each word a struggle to confront his failure. He couldn't undo what he'd done, but he could face it. The next evening, he stood outside James' modest Mission District apartment, the envelope trembling in his grip. The building was quiet, the faint aroma of spices drifting from open windows. James answered the door, his face a mix of surprise and wariness. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice calm but guarded. Michael swallowed hard. "I came to say what I couldn't before," he said. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." He held out the letter, his eyes pleading for a chance to be heard. James hesitated, the pain of that day still raw. But something in Michael's expression, vulnerable, stripped of the arrogance he'd worn at the bank, softened him. He stepped aside. "Come in," he said. Inside, the apartment was simple but warm, photos of Sarah and Emily lining the walls. James gestured to a small table and they sat, the letter between them. Michael spoke first, his voice unsteady. "My mom was like you," he said. "She came here with nothing, worked her hands raw. People judged her, her accent, her clothes. I hated them for it, but I never stood up for her. When I saw you, I saw her, and I turned you into everything I was afraid she was. I'm ashamed." James listened, his hands folded, his eyes steady but not unkind. Michael's confession stirred memories of his own journey, crossing the border with Sarah, sleeping in his car to save rent, learning English from radio ads while driving strangers across the city. "I came here for my family," James said quietly. "Every dollar in that envelope was for Sarah's heart, for Emily's future. You didn't just take my money that day, you took my hope." His voice cracked, and Michael looked away, tears brimming. "I didn't see you," Michael admitted. "I saw a stereotype. I was wrong." The room fell silent, the weight of their shared pain filling the space. James leaned forward, his voice firm but not cruel. "I forgive you," he said. "But forgiveness isn't enough. Do something. Change how you see people, how your bank treats them. Make this mean something." Michael nodded, his throat tight. "I will," he promised. "I'm signing up for a training program at the bank, about equality, about listening. I want to get this right." As Michael stood to leave, James handed him back the letter. "Keep this," he said. "Not for me, but for you. So you remember." Michael clutched it, a lifeline to his better self. He stepped into the night, the weight of his actions still heavy, but now paired with purpose. James closed the door, his heart lighter but still aching. He didn't know if Michael's promise would hold, but he'd given him a chance, just as Keanu had given him a voice. Outside, the city pulsed on, unaware of the quiet transformation unfolding. But this moment, born of raw honesty and shared humanity, was a spark. What Michael did next would show whether he could honor James' forgiveness, and whether the world could learn to see men like James for who they truly were. The fallout from Keanu Reeves' confrontation at Wells Fargo rippled through San Francisco, igniting conversations about justice and dignity. The viral video, viewed millions of times, forced the bank to act. Under pressure, they partnered with Lisa, a local social worker known for her advocacy in the Mission District, to launch Respect for All, a training program on diversity and inclusion. James, whose story had sparked this change, was invited to share his experience at the first session. He hesitated, unsure if his voice could carry such weight, but Keanu's quiet encouragement, "They need to hear you, James," gave him strength. Standing before a room of bank employees, James spoke not of anger, but of hope, his words raw and human. "I just wanted to be seen," he said, his voice steady, "not as a driver, not as an immigrant, but as a man trying to save his wife." The room was silent, some eyes glistening, as his truth sank in. Meanwhile, the Mission District rallied around James' family. Neighbors, inspired by the video, organized a fundraiser for Sarah's surgery. Flyers went up in taquerias and community centers, and soon, a small park was filled with music, food stalls, and people donating what they could. Unbeknownst to James, Keanu had quietly contributed a substantial sum, insisting his name stay off the donor list. "This is their moment," he told Lisa, his voice firm. The funds poured in, and Sarah's surgery was scheduled, a beacon of hope after years of worry. Emily, James's daughter, received a surprise scholarship from a local nonprofit, easing the burden of her nursing school tuition. For the first time, James felt the weight on his shoulders lighten, not just from the money, but from the community's embrace. Weeks later, the neighborhood held a celebration to mark Sarah's successful surgery. The same park buzzed with laughter, children running through the grass and tables laden with homemade dishes. James stood at a makeshift podium, Sarah by his side, her smile brighter than it had been in years. Emily, beaming with pride, held her mother's hand. James looked out at the crowd, friends, neighbors, even strangers who'd heard his story, and his voice trembled with gratitude. "I thought I was alone," he said, "but you showed me I'm not. Thank you for seeing us. Applause erupted, warm and genuine, as people wiped tears and hugged one another. Keanu stood at the back, his baseball cap pulled low, content to blend into the crowd. Reporters circled, eager for a quote from the star who'd sparked this movement, but Keanu waved them off. "This isn't my story," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. "It's James. Always has been." He caught James' eye across the park, offering a nod that spoke volumes. A shared understanding, forged in years of silent rides, and now this shared victory. James nodded back, a lump in his throat. Keanu's humility, his refusal to take the spotlight, made the moment mean even more. The Respect for All program began to spread to other Wells Fargo branches, with James's story as its cornerstone. Lisa reported that employees were engaging, some sharing their own experiences of bias, others committing to change. The Mission District, too, felt a shift. Neighbors who'd once kept to themselves now greeted James warmly, their walls of indifference crumbling. This wasn't the end of injustice, but it was a start, a testament to what happens when one man's pain is met with another's compassion. As the event wound down, James looked at his family, their faces glowing with hope, and felt something new: belonging. Keanu slipped away quietly, but his impact lingered, a reminder that change begins with seeing each other, truly, for who we are. A year after the storm that shook the Wells Fargo on Market Street, James stood taller, his steps lighter. Sarah's heart surgery had been a success, and she now moved through their Mission District apartment with a vitality James hadn't seen in years. Emily, their daughter, had graduated nursing school and begun her first shifts at San Francisco General Hospital, her eyes bright with purpose. James still drove for Keanu Reeves, navigating the city's streets with the same steady hand, but something had changed within him. The man who once felt invisible, diminished by a world quick to judge, now carried a quiet confidence. He was seen, not just by his family, but by a community that had rallied around him, and by a friend whose compassion had turned his pain into a catalyst for change. Michael, the teller who'd once dismissed James, had found his own path to redemption. The viral video and James's forgiveness had been a mirror, forcing him to confront his biases. He'd enrolled in the bank's Respect for All program, but his transformation went deeper. Michael now volunteered at a Mission District community center, teaching immigrants about financial rights, how to open accounts, avoid predatory fees, and demand fair treatment. One evening he mailed James a letter, its words simple but heavy with meaning. "You gave me a chance I didn't deserve," he wrote. "I'm trying to honor that every day. Thank you for showing me what it means to be human." James read it quietly, then tucked it away with Sarah's old love notes and Emily's childhood drawings, a reminder that even broken moments could mend. One serene morning, James and Keanu found themselves at Golden Gate Park, the sedan parked under a canopy of eucalyptus trees. They'd stopped to stretch their legs, a rare pause in their routine. Keanu leaned against the car, his gaze distant, thoughtful. "You know," he said, his voice soft, "when I lost my sister, the world felt like it was caving in. I didn't talk much, didn't know how, but you were there, James. Every day, opening the door, driving, just steady. You didn't say much, but you held space for me." He paused, meeting James's eyes. "I just wanted to return that." James felt a warmth spread through him, his throat tight. For years, he'd seen his role as small, a driver in the background of a star's life. But Keanu's words painted a different picture, one where his quiet presence had mattered, deeply. "I didn't know," James said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just did my job." Keanu smiled, a rare, unguarded grin. "That's the thing, James. You did more than that. You showed up, and now look at what you've done for this city." James looked away, humbled, feeling for the first time that he was truly seen, not as an immigrant, not as a driver, but as a man whose life had weight. Later that day, James joined Sarah and Emily at the park. The three of them sprawled on a blanket, laughing over a picnic. Sarah's laughter was music, Emily's stories from the hospital filled with hope. James watched them, his heart full, knowing this moment was a gift born of struggle and kindness. Across the park, Keanu passed by, his hoodie up, hands in his pockets. He caught James's eye, offered a gentle wave, and kept walking. his figure fading into the crowd. No words were needed. Their bond, forged in shared silences and a stand for justice, spoke louder than any speech. The world hadn't become perfect. Bias still lingered in corners of the city, and James knew his family would face challenges ahead. But something had shifted. The Respect for All program grew, Michael's work empowered others, and the Mission District felt a little closer, a little kinder. Keanu's quiet compassion had lit a spark, proving that change begins with seeing each other, truly, for who we are. As James held Sarah's hand, Emily's laughter ringing in his ears, he understood the truth. Silent kindness, like a ripple, could change a world, one heart at a time. This story of Keanu and James hits hard because it's not just about one man's fight. It's about all of us. I believe kindness, like Keanu's, can shift perspectives, but I also think change demands action, not just good intentions. Some might argue the system's too broken for one person to make a difference, and I get that. It's easy to feel powerless. Yet James's courage and Keanu's stand remind me that small acts, listening, speaking up, build a better world. What do you think? Can one moment really spark lasting change, or is it just a drop in the bucket? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment. Huge thanks for watching and supporting this channel. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep these conversations going.